Hey, welcome to Fran Opps Live. I'm Jared. I'm your host. Just so you know, out of the gate, right? This morning, we're already having a little bit of some technical difficulties, as you can tell with the camera. Just ignore that. We got a great conversation for you today. And so I think listening is going to be the most important aspect to this entire thing. So if you want, you can even put your in-ears in, and some of you are already doing this, and go for a walk or something. But you don't have to watch, but just don't do it while you're driving. Anyway, well, I guess if you're just listening, it doesn't matter. Today's going to be a great conversation, and I'm really excited about this because as we're talking about this, here it is. Let me kind of set this up. This is what we're talking about. The truth about hands-off ownership models. Here's the reality. Every single person I talk to, every single person that comes to me or reaches out to me and wants to learn about a certain franchise or franchise opportunities, every single person I talk to, every candidate I work with, they want to do either one or a combination of one of these three things, right? They're looking for either more control, or they're looking for financial freedom, right? That's something it seems like everyone kind of shares or kind of unified, and they want financial freedom. Now, people might have a different understanding of what that means to them, but that's one thing they're looking for is financial freedom. Another thing that people are looking for is they want something along these lines of leaving a legacy. So most people are looking for financial freedom, and or they're looking to leave a legacy. And the big one that everyone's also looking for is control over their time and schedule. It's no surprise. Whenever I hop on a call with someone, I'm going to ask them that question. Why are we talking? What are you looking to do? Why are you wanting to explore franchises? And without a doubt, they will say either one of those three things or some kind of combination of those three things. I don't know if I've heard anything new outside of those three parameters, outside of those three goals ever in this business. And that's what people are shooting for. And that third one is one that seems to span every generation. It doesn't matter what age group you're coming from. It doesn't seem to matter what tax bracket you're in currently. It seems like every single person I talk to is looking for some kind of control over their own time and schedule. Now, for different reasons. Some want to be able to go play golf more. Some want to have more time with their own kids. Some want to have more time with their grandkids. Some want to be able to go on vacation whenever. Like, there's different reasons, but it all comes back to this idea of wanting to have more time. And usually people come to me and they ask, okay, I want more control over my schedule. And then if that is the case, then they kind of go, so show me something. And they'll say a few of these terms. They'll say passive, or they'll say, show me something absentee. And that's where we really got to narrow down on what we're talking about. And that's why this conversation matters today, is what does that mean? What does that even look like? Is there even a reality to that kind of concept when it comes to you owning a business? Is that possible in franchising? That's what we're talking about today. And we have on with us the co-founder and president of Blue Moon Estate Sales, David Blue, with us today. Man, I am really excited for today's conversation. We're going to dive in. Hang on to the very end, because at the very end, I'm actually going to show you a sneak peek, kind of a behind the scenes of one of these franchises in operation. You're going to see what this even looks like, so you can kind of get a feel of what it looks like as well for you, so you're not kind of going in blind, but you'll be able to walk away understanding what this is, what this looks like. You can kind of get your mind wrapped around it. And before we dive in, I thought this would be appropriate to set the stage for our conversation today by doing this. I kind of want to kick us off with just a snippet of an interview with a franchisee, a current franchisee with Blue Moon Estates, is because you're going to hear. I want you to listen close. She says some really important things about time and flexibility. So let's dive right in without further ado. Welcome, David. This is Fran Opps Live.
Owning a franchise has actually been more than I've expected. It exceeded expectations in the providing flexibility. I come from a corporate background where I truly worked 80-hour weeks, if not more. And I've been able to reduce my number of hours, and I've been able to have more control over my schedule, which has allowed me to be more present and engaged when it comes to my children and family. And even when we go on family trips, I've always taken a laptop, worked, taken phone calls, all those different things. Somehow, it's now more engaging. It's more fun. It's because what we do is a service, and the service is to help individuals in transition and challenges and reduce and minimize stress. And I really have a joy when I get to speak about what I do to potential clients. So I don't mind taking those phone calls.
Yeah. Wow, that's so good. David, welcome, my friends. Good to see you. Sorry, I don't know what in the world's wrong with the camera today. That's going to bug the crap out of me for this whole time, but hopefully it doesn't bother you. You're a professional, so I appreciate that. But I mean, welcome. This is, I'm really excited about this conversation and having you on as well inside this group. Thanks for joining us and giving up your time to do that, your time to do that. And that's what we're talking about today, right?
Hey.
Is really what it comes down to is time. And so that's kind of where I want to start is I always think it's appropriate before you kind of dive into really any conversation to make sure we're on the same page of what we're talking about. So could we just even start by defining our term? So when we say hands off, to you, David, what does that mean? What would be your definition of it? And is there a difference between that and say absentee or semi-absentee? Are there, what would be our definitions we're working with here?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, this topic really intrigued me because I've probably spoken about this topic with, hundreds of candidates over the years. And, how I always looked at it as hands off is off the tools. So you're not the one that's actually performing the service out there, grinding, doing the work. Hands off is you are sitting in an office. You have dashboards, you have tools, you can make business decisions while not being boots on the ground, performing the actual service. That's how I always looked at hands off. With the semi-absentee, that still kind of applies, having the metrics and the KPIs in front of you to make good business decisions. But, when you're starting a business, you can't necessarily be semi-absentee. You do need to put in some grit, some energy to bring on the team, fire up your marketing engines, get the systems in place that the franchisor has created, and that takes a little bit of time, and for some people it comes natural, and it might be a month to hire your team.
Well, let me say this, but let me play devil's advocate, right? Because people will go, well, David. They'll say, well, David, that's why I'm buying into a franchise, is because you already have the systems and the playbook in place to start that and do that for me, right? So that way I can be more semi-absentee out of the gate.
So the systems are created, but the franchise owner needs to be the one that implements them and needs to carry them forward into the employees that they hire. The systems are great, right? And when you put them to use, it really kind of keeps you in the lines as long as you're, following, those systems that are created. But, but there needs to be someone, aka the franchisee, the owner of that business, that carries them forward and creates that culture within, their four walls of their separate business entity.
Yeah. That's so good. Let's can you share with us, David? We really haven't even talked at all about Blue Moon Estate. You've co-founded it, you're president of it. Give us, the high level view. What is Blue Moon Estate Sales and your story of it, and then we'll kind of get into, is this a hands-off ownership model? And what does that even mean? Right. So go ahead, David. Tell us a little bit of your story.
Yeah. So family and I started this company back in 2009. So father was working for IBM. The recession hit. They said, see you later. HR's down the hallway. And he was really struggling to find work, given his age, and no one was hiring. And so he started the original business, which was called Blue Moon Antiques and Estate Sales.
Okay.
And because it was kind of something that he was passionate about, which is just buying and selling things for profit. But the estate sale side of the business really kind of started growing legs for us. There's a huge
population. Okay, so there's a separation there, because I feel like I usually hear the word estate, and honestly, my mind goes to, is it mostly antique stuff anyway?
No. So antiques really are probably 5 to 10% of our business.
Oh, really?
Yeah, wow. It's pretty small, and that's by choice. We're really selective with what jobs we bring on. So what we do is there's a big aging population out there with a lot of stuff. They're downsizing, they're moving. Maybe they lost a loved one, and so they're hiring us to come in and efficiently really merchandise and sell everything and anything you could possibly imagine. So think cars, jewelry, pots and pans, silverware,
board games.
I could go on about some wild things I've sold.
I bet. That's a whole nother podcast right there.
I could write a couple books. So that's great. But so there's this huge population right now that are all kind of downsizing, and they have big homes full of stuff, and then so they're hiring us to officially sell it all, and so we can basically sell a lifetime worth of possessions in a week.
Yeah, wow.
And we've got the tools, the systems, the technology to help streamline that and get buyers in the door to come in and buy this stuff at a fair market value.
Yeah. And part of that is incredibly humbling to know that everything you've accumulated over your life could be sold within a week.
Absolutely. So, so at the beginning, that's how the business just started growing legs for us. And, we started this when, we had a knuckle buster for a credit card scanner, none of that really existed. But then I joined the business about a year and a half later, because I finished school, and the job market was awful, and so I was like, I'm going to take a risk and of my sanity and joining my family.
You talk about risk. Oh my goodness,
I was like, this is going to be something either good or really bad. But I joined us with the intention or the grand vision of franchising. I saw that there was a fragmented market all over the country with no SOP, no processes of how to have a paper trail and how to pay out terms to clients. All the things that are really important. There's a lot of fly-by-night companies operating out there and scamming people. And so I saw that, it was prime for scaling through franchising. And so I joined, and, in the beginning, it was not hands-off ownership for me, just because we didn't have systems. We didn't have really anything.
Right.
I spent about 2 years operationalizing us, getting us stood up with, different marketing plans, and you name it, we created it. And then we started offering franchises in June 1st, 2013. I'll never forget that. So
about 13 years ago.
13 years ago. Businesses,
And where are you at today? How many franchisees are currently in your system, and are all of them hands off?
So based in Raleigh, North Carolina. I think right now we're sitting around 150, 155 owners.
Incredible.
I went to our national conference, back in November, where all the franchisees come together, and they curate a couple days of content. And I'd say I kind of classify our owners as kind of two different categories. One is like really serious about growing it and scaling a business. Then the other part is a little bit more hobbyist, where maybe they're okay with doing 1-2 events a week. And so the hobbyists are probably more hands off with things. Where the people that are really excited to scale the business, are it's a combination of being hands off and then also just being passionate and helping people. Not necessarily on the tools, but maybe they're working with the referral sources or, the clients on the sales cycle. So they're getting to pick and choose what part of the business excites them, and then kind of stay in their lane and then hire for all the roles they don't want to do.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so they have freedom and kind of flexibility to choose how they want to run and operate this business, and they can still be successful at it up to however they want to define success. And I think that's helpful to hear that, like, as you were talking about when you guys were building this franchise, you were building this business, you were definitely not hands off. You were full-time plus building the systems. And so I think, and that is so, relatable to nearly anyone who's ever been a franchisor, anybody who's been the owner, the founder of a brand or business. You are responsible for building it up. So in one sense, our audience listening, when you come to me as your consultant, you go, hey, I want you to show me something hands off. Nearly every franchise in one sense is going to be hands off because the systems have already been developed. The tools have already been put in place so that you're not doing any of that to go find it and build it yourself. So you'll be hands off of all that foundational and early decision-making things, of the pain and the grit that the founder and the people building this, they had to go through. So in one sense, they're kind of already hands off. And I like your term, your definition, kind of off the tools, because it's important to, like, hey, when you say hands off, you really need to define hands off of what. Like, if you mean hands off the business, no, that's not a thing, right? I think it clearly will set you up for failure if you want to be hands off this business. And why would you? I mean, you're the one investing all of this capital, all of this life savings to get into it. Why would you be hands off?
Yeah, if you want hands off, buy an ETF.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Or any kind of Bitcoin or whatever, go and invest into something like that, but don't start a business. It requires a certain level of investment responsibility to really get into this.
Yeah.
So,
Jared, what are your thoughts on hands-off parenting?
Hands-off parenting. That's a great analogy. Oh my goodness. I love that. I hadn't even thought about that. If I were to have a kid out of the gate and bring that child home and just kind of put them on the couch as a baby, hand them the remote, tell them where the food is in the fridge, and say, hey, good luck. I don't think that baby would be very viable for very long.
It needs some nourishment, right? And with hands-off businesses, like, I think the owner is really needs to be responsible for the balance sheet, the P&L, and then the budgets.
Yeah.
And then you need to hire the employees that can make your budget a reality. You need to set the marketing budgets to achieve the revenue goals that you set, and then reverse engineer it from there on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis of how many leads is it going to take to get me to my goals. And if it's not actual marketing spend, then how much time do I need to allocate to the referral sources to get me the leads, to get me to my revenue goals. So, all that, really kind of falls on the owner. And, a good story I'll tell, because,
please do.
We still own our original location, that was founded, still operational. I had one of my employees who's been with me really since inception. She retired a couple weeks ago. And,
oh, really?
She did all of my back of house admin, payroll, bank deposits, all of that.
Okay.
And so when she retired, there was no succession there of another employee.
Yeah. So what do you do? That's a lot to manage.
Yeah, I had to step in on that and and take over some of those responsibilities for the interim period until we promote somebody. But that's something that an owner needs to do. And so it was extremely hands off for me with the business. So I had a fantastic team, tenured, experienced team. But when you lose a key person, you need to step in and then to backfill and then hire someone else and train them up. So, that's the kind of things you need to think about being a business owner, because, you're in charge, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It all falls on you as the owner.
Yeah, it makes sense because I think that's where most people's minds go is, if they want to build this to become hands off, then yes, it's going to require when emergencies happen, when staff leave, you have to step in. I think most people I talk to, they can wrap their minds around that. But what about the other aspect of it? Not so much so when things happen, you got to step in, but the part of, what does the role, what role does leadership play when you're not physically involved in every part of the day-to-day operations? We're not talking emergencies. We're not talking someone leaves, you got to step in, but what is the responsibility of someone that can be, when they get there, more hands off? What does leadership look like beyond, hey, I've read my P&L for the month?
Yeah.
I
mean, it really is just knowing your numbers at the end of the day, and and then executing on those numbers. Are you meeting those goals? Or are you not meeting those goals? If you don't have a right-hand person or second in command to make staff changes, then then the owner needs to step in and make staff changes to align with the business's needs. I've seen a lot of franchisees really struggle with hiring and terminating of employees too. They'll keep the bad employees for too long, and
sure,
they're willing to go down with the ship versus letting their son-in-law go.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Family. There it is. That's a number of issues coming with family. You got to learn to, I've heard it said, you got to learn to hire slow and fire fast.
Yes. Yes. So really, so it falls down on the more financial side of things above all else, with the hands-off approach. So, understanding a P&L, not just, the profit and loss statement, but understanding every line item and what feeds into every line item on that P&L. And then your cash flow too, managing your cash flow, what's coming in and what's coming out. And so if I'm speaking a foreign language to any of the listeners, like, you need to read up on just the language of business, because as a small business owner, cash is king, right? And that your P&L can make or break you on a monthly basis too. And when revenue dries up here and there, there's always dry spots. So planning ahead with your budgets, all that falls on the owner. And because your team, a lot of, I'd say, service-based franchises are more blue collar employees, so they're not necessarily going to be CPA level financial employees. Like that falls onto the owner. And I was kind of looked at the owners that succeed are kind of Swiss Army knife generalists. They can speak the language of P&L,
maybe not expert in any particular field, but
correct,
good at all of them.
But they can kind of jump, wear many hats in the sense of just being able to speak the language. So for me, I was having a discussion with my bookkeeper earlier today. So again, falls within the financial window. And so that's where I'd say, once the business is producing revenue, that's where I spend probably 70% of my time, is just analyzing, where we're at to budget, how many leads are coming in, and what leads are required to meet my monthly budget each week. So just KPI management.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so let's get real practical then with Blue Moon. Like, for you guys as kind of the, I don't know if the subject expert on this with your brand, do you guys have a kind of a system in place for franchisees that will help them scale and grow this to a place where they can be more hands off? Like, well, if they were to buy into Blue Moon, is there a pathway that they'll be given to know who to hire, when you need to hand this thing off, what the next chapter is, all these kinds of, do you have those kinds of timeline elements as they, desire to move to a tools off or hands off or some form of semi-absentee model?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've been, honing this business for
Mhm.
13 years now, at least since we've been
Yeah.
franchising. So, we have the financial models built out of what this looks like. Of course,
Okay.
we can't share that with candidates,
Right.
but
Yeah.
we have the dashboard, so we can see what's going on in the business from a
Okay.
back of house and from a front of house perspective.
Yeah.
Got our all of the job descriptions all written out. We've got the HR tools put in
Yeah.
place. For a couple clicks of my mouse, I can put the job posting. I put a job posting out to replace
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
And I had candidates, within 30 minutes applying for that
Oh,
job.
nice.
And
Yeah.
so, so we've got a runway of what the first 12, 24, 36
Okay.
look like,
Yep.
and the team manages, or at
That's
least
great.
the franchisor team manages, to that, and but it helps set the guardrails up for the new franchise owner in
Mhm.
terms of defining what the first 12 months look like, and
Yeah. Yeah.
successful or are you off pace?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. Yeah. So then tell me this, how should someone, realistically evaluate whether a hands-off type of business is really a fit for their goals and lifestyle? Because I think every candidate I work with, they want that. They say they want that, but I'm not sure every candidate would survive being hands off very well. I feel like there are some people, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there's some people who are built to be hands on, and that's them. That's their style. That's what they know. That's how they lead. They need to be hands on. Speaking of that,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I can tell stories of success and failure from either side of that
yeah,
equation. Sometimes, for business owners are their own worst enemy in
hmm,
scaling their business. They're getting in
yeah,
the way of micromanaging every little thing, and they're not
mhm,
delegating and getting to the next level of growing. And then on the flip side, I've seen people be so hands off where they don't want to hire anybody, they don't want to do anything, and
yeah, mhm,
Netflix is more enjoyable than
yeah,
building
yeah,
their business up.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
Good.
when you're thinking about owning a business, and I talked to it earlier, but like if terms like P&L and balance sheet
Yeah.
scare you or
Mhm,
just kind of go over your head, I would just take a sidestep real quick and just
mhm,
educate yourself a little bit, because it's the real deal.
yeah,
Business ownership is full contact sports, no
mm,
matter semi-absentee or not. You've
yep,
got decisions that need to be made,
yeah,
people to hire, people to fire,
yep,
discussions with vendors, suppliers,
yeah,
the franchisor team,
yep.
all that. It's full contact sport
I like
still.
that. Yeah.
Even if you're not on the tools, like there's still decisions to be made, because you are the owner.
Yeah.
So, and, the whole goal of business ownership, investing in franchising, really is to outpace the market, right? If you were to
Mm,
invest that
right.
in
Mhm.
an
Yep.
ETF at a 5% return, I think you can if you do it right, follow the model laid
Yep.
forth, you can expect a higher NOI than
Uh-huh.
5%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
And I like the analogy. And I'm gonna let me say this, and I'll ask you one more question, because I want to kind of get your take on those listening now or even later on, those who exploring business ownership, hoping they're searching for more flexibility. Advice. I just want to give you one last piece of advice. What would you tell them? But I want to go back to the analogy you said first about hands-off parenting. I think that is so appropriate to business ownership, because early on in the life of any child, no, you cannot be hands-off. It is actually your responsibility, as the parent, to invest yourself entirely into the life of that child, because they are completely dependent on you. Now, as that child grows, they're going to go through multiple stages that will allow you and require you, even if that child's going to continue to grow, to become more hands-off with your parenting style, to allow them to become more independent and to grow. And again, if you were to be hands-on as you are in the first couple of years, if you were to do that when they're in their 20s, that kid's going to struggle to survive in this world. And so I like that analogy a lot, that, the parenting path of a child kind of follows the life of a business, and learning to help grow alongside that. And your style has to change, things, how you lead that business has to change as you go. But
yeah, and then,
it's really good.
As the business becomes stable and more predictable, then you can keep stepping back further and further. At one point, I was probably working an hour a week, and I got really bored because the business was, doing its own thing. And, I had a fantastic team in place.
Yeah.
And in the very, very beginning, I was my own worst enemy, because I didn't empower the team to do their best work on a daily basis. And now that I've kind of gotten past that, you get a lot of freedom after that.
Yeah, wow.
You nurture it in the beginning, and then you get to, get the reward, forever.
Yeah. That's so good. David, I can't thank you enough for doing this. Is there anything else you would add? Any final words of advice that you would give to someone hoping for more flexibility and freedom? So they're going to leave corporate so they can go to own their own business, so they can get that. Any last piece of advice you would give them before they jump all in?
Yeah. I've got a couple books here. I'll just kind of flash them up on the screen of, some books that, that were really kind of pivotal. And when I was getting out of my own way, traction, this is a staple probably in really any small business owner, even large business owner, library. And then to follow that up, this is a little different iteration. It's called Scaling Up, kind of similar to Traction, but also great way to hold your team accountable and scale up to be hands-off or semi-absentee. So it's all about empowering and holding your team accountable as you're growing. Yeah. And then, of course, we've got Angela Duckworth's Grit.
Oh, yeah.
Start a business. So, it's business ownership is so rewarding at the end of the day. And, I've enjoyed, the last 10 or 13 years, in franchising and empowering others to take the leap of faith into joining us. And it is something that is fantastic about this country. And I definitely recommend, people pursuing their passions and finding something that, makes them want to get up in the morning and get to work. I don't mind Mondays really at all anymore.
Right. Look forward to it. Yeah. I love what the franchisee we saw, her a little bit of her story at the beginning of this conversation, where she even said, she enjoys it. She enjoys taking her computer, with her when she's traveling, and she enjoys. She literally doesn't. It's not even necessarily needing a vacation from work, because she genuinely loves it and finds value from it. That's what it should be like.
Yeah, it's just not. It just work doesn't feel like work anymore when you get the fruits of your labor. You are directly impacted. And one more story before we go. Talking about freedom. My daughter was sick today, and I decided, she's at home right now upstairs. Yeah, and I just decided to take, really the whole day off of work except for this podcast.
Yeah. Oh wow.
And flexibility to do so. And my wife's upstairs, so she's not by herself. But
okay, good. Yeah. That's delegation right there.
But that's the joys of entrepreneurship. Wow. And
that's spot on. That's a real life case study right there. David, thank you so much for for doing this and being a part of this, and even still giving of your time today in the midst of, having a sick child at home. And so I genuinely appreciate that. I'm humbled and honored by that. So thanks for doing that. And friends, if you're watching this right now or later at another date, doesn't matter when, just type in the comments. If you want to learn more about this, and especially Blue Moon, type in the comments, just type Blue Moon in the comments, and we'll get a conversation going with you right away. And also, if you're interested and want to learn just more about franchising in general, you wanted to connect and talk through some questions, you can literally just I'm going to drop it in the comments right now. You can find a time to connect with me and schedule what we call our strategy session call, and really kind of help determine, for you is franchising in general the right next step for you. And then, because you may think it is, not always the case. But then if it is, okay, now what kind of brands, what kind of models, what kind of business will you thrive in? I'm not looking for you to just survive. I want you to thrive. And so that's kind of the whole hope. And it very well could be Blue Moon. For many of you, I hope it is. So let's begin that conversation today. David, thank you so much for doing this. Friends, while you're watching, I told you I want to give you kind of a sneak peek so you can kind of see what, is behind the scenes with a estate sale, and what that kind of honestly in real life looks like and feels like. So enjoy. Until then, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you.